Welcome everyone, Christine here with a discussion about the hardest campaigns in Total War Warhammer 3 Immortal Empires. And number 5 is Malachi McCason. But why Malachi? Isn't he a really powerful legendary lord? Yes. But at the same time, he does certainly have a hard campaign. He has an easy start with dealing with the Nurgle faction over here that does nothing. But a hard campaign isn't just about the start. For instance, you could say he has a hard campaign because he might have to deal with Malachi early on, but that's a hard start. Same with Boris Ursus. Whereas with Malachi, you've got Archeon, you've got Arbol, you've got the Demon Prince, you've got Frot, you got Trog, you got Wulfric, Azazel. The list just keeps coming and coming and coming, and there's so many enemies, each of which is quite capable of giving you a hell of a time, regardless of how powerful you are. You might have incredibly powerful armies. You do have an incredibly powerful faction under your control as a dwarf. But at the same time, you are surrounded on all sides with vulnerable territory that you start with. And there's a lot of things on your plate over here to deal with. Certainly, Malachi is extremely powerful, but when you're constantly being attacked on all possible sides, or when you can be attacked, and it does require a good amount of strategy, and you're always, just one step away from disaster in a campaign. Not completely complete disaster, but disaster. If you lose one army in a key sector, things get astronomically more difficult in this campaign. It is that kind of campaign. It is a great campaign because you have the tools needed to deal with your foes, but you are going to be playing a difficult one with regards to Malachi. And number 4 is Tic Tac Toe of the Lizardmen, because he now starts a war with Warzag the Great Green Prophet, which is, by the way, a fairly uncommon situation to actually start a war with another legendary lord. Well, I guess CA did want to make things more difficult for someone, or rather wanted to make Warzag's campaign more interesting. They succeeded in that respect. But Tic Tac Toe ends up losing significantly. Let me explain why this is. So Warzag can recruit troops faster than you, and that's not even counting the AI cheats, which also do play a role. He has a better economy to recruit troops. If he gets to tier 3 with his main settlement, good luck dealing with him. He has more magical capability than you. Actually, you have no magical capability in this campaign. He has easier access to a greater variety of units, better economy, and that's just baseline greenskin. Don't even get me started on the AI cheats. But you might say, oh, that just makes it a hard start. No. Because once you deal with Warzag, if you deal with Warzag, you then have Manfred, who doesn't especially like you. Then if you do manage to survive Manfred's horde of zombies, keeping in mind the limited movement range you have around the jungle, near you, etc., then you have the problem that Kairos Fateweaver might become a major issue in this campaign. This is the problem with every campaign that starts over here if you're playing on Legendary. Kairos is going to be an issue because he's, on Legendary specifically, he's capable of being up Axial, just Siege having a better honor resolve than Lizardmen, especially the armies that Axial has. So Siege, with all the AI cheats that do occur on Legendary, becomes a major thorn in your side. And so enjoy dealing with the dynamic over there, especially when you have to deal with Kairos Fateweaver as a short campaign victory condition. I mean, Warzag is bad enough. Having to invade the southern Castways against an entrenched Kairos where Axiatl may or may not help you is simply put a freaking nightmare. And don't expect any allied faction, if you even have it, to help you out. Oh, and don't forget Manfred. And even if you deal with Manfred, there might be other problems that you might have to deal with from the north. So plenty of issues. I probably recommend dealing with Warzag than dealing with Manfred one way or another, and then making an alliance with Volkmar so he secures your northern flank while you throw everything you have against Kairos. But it is going to be a hell of a campaign, this one, to play with. Lizardmen are just not a great race. Some campaigns that are hard, they're hard because they're designed in a great fashion. Other campaigns are hard because the Legendary Lord is part of a race that's just not that great. And besides, Tic Tac Toe, honestly, is just not really that great of a Legendary Lord. I mean, yes, he does have flying units, let me just say this. Those flying units do not compare in the slightest with the power of gyrocopters that dwarves do have. Flying units can be really powerful, undeniably so, but you're in for a nightmarish time in this campaign. At number 3, it would be Nari. Oh man, Nari's campaign is pure pain and suffering. So I guess it is very appropriate for Sinnelleos, right? But I think even Sinnelleos would flinch at the level of masochism it requires to play this campaign. Don't get me wrong, it is very fun to do it once in your life, but after that I would firmly recommend not ever replaying this campaign because it is just pure pain and suffering. So here's the issue. Sinnelleos units, for the most part, are made up of low armor units, which is a problem when you're up against the mighty High Elves, which have significant range power. Now, you do have fast-moving units, you do have the ability of controlling flanks, but then High Elves have spearmen that can control you in that regards. You have really poor casualty replenishment. You have limited recruitment slots in your campaign as well. So you're going to be up against Alariel, Elfarion, and Tyrion. These 3 are some of the strongest legendary lords in the game, for all the issues High Elves may have as a race. Now, you do have a bit of a secret weapon over here in that you can summon a disciple army over here, or use the ritual of summoning right here if you want to. So there are options you can use in order to make this campaign quote-unquote easier, but make no mistake, you are going to be dealing with a nightmare of a situation here in the early game in particular. This is not a difficult start. This is a difficult freaking campaign that pushes you up against the wall. The only reason this campaign isn't higher on this list is that once you do overcome that difficult early game situation and you get Elfarion, Alariel, and Tyrion as vassals, which by the way you should, the campaign becomes significantly easier. In fact, it becomes a cakewalk of a campaign. But those 20, 30 turns it's going to take you to deal with Alariel, Tyrion, and... Alariel, Elfarion, and Tyrion, actually. Those are going to be some of the most brutal 20, 30 turns in the entire game. Again, a lot of fun. I don't consider it the hardest just because it becomes a cakewalk later on. But all the same, I think this campaign has a very, very strong argument for that specific position. So yeah, Nari, if you want a brutal time, and it really does come down to issues of the race in this case, like just Sinnelleos, limited recruitment, your starting situation, casualty replenishment, a lot of the units you have. I don't know what CA is going to do with the Sinnelleos DLC, but hopefully they do make things better, because it is pain and suffering. And number 2, it would be Teclis of the High Elves. High Elves are a fairly strong race, but they are a strong race that takes a while to get there. They have a very strong unit roster available in their campaign early on, with spearmen and archers with light armor being able to give you a good amount of capability. Well, Teclis starts a war with a greater demon faction, and that's his first battle in a campaign. I could end it right there, because it is saying quite a bit. Like, look at this army. You get... Surferel, you get Flamers of Tzeentch, you get Screamers. I mean, the only good thing about this battle is you can auto-resolve it on any difficulty. But that's just the easy part, really. Just kind of pointing that out, though, because that is what you're going to have to deal with in this campaign. I'm actually surprised that I was able to auto-resolve both those battles without losing a single unit. What do I know? Sometimes. But that's just the start, gentlemen. That is really, really just the start. To the south, you have the mighty Kairos Fateweaver, and see, here's the difference between the northern castaways and the southern castaways. Accessibility. In the northern castaways, there's many ways to go about and invade there, because there's a decent number of ports. In the southern castaways, the distances are great. Obviously, the climate is going to screw you over, unless you're using a climate change mod, which, yes, I do have over here installed. But there's only like a handful of ports they can use to access this place. And suffice to say, the Tzeentchian army, well, Tzeentch may have problems when you're playing him, but when you're playing up against Tzeentch, especially on higher difficulties like Legendary very hard, for instance, over here, things do start looking a bit different, especially once Tzeentch starts spamming Forsaken and Tangor, so that becomes a real nightmare, because they can resist your range power in this campaign. Magical power, Teclis is kind of pathetic with regards to that. He can cast a lot of spells, but the spells he has are not especially strong. And that's just one problem. You might think that's just Kairos. No, no, no. You have other issues beyond Kairos. Kairos is certainly a major issue in this campaign, but there's other problems as well. To the north, you have Warzag and Tic Tac Toe. Now, from every single campaign I've played with Omens of Destruction, in every single one of them, Warzag becomes a major threat. Who do you think he's gonna come after once he finishes beating up the two weakling Lizardmen factions that stand against him? You would be right. He's going to come after you when you are most vulnerable, because you're probably going to have to expend a significant amount of resources dealing with Fate Weaver. And that is not the end of it either, because even if you win against Warzag and Kairos, which good luck with that, all I can say, you end up going into the Khemri Thunderdome or sharing a border with the Khemri Thunderdome when the climate there is uninhabitable. Have fun with that. Or you have to go in Lustria. In Lustria against Lizardmen, who probably don't like you all that much, but also against Skulltaker, against Skrulk, Rakarth, and others. Hell, it is actually a smart thing to go for Lustria because, well, that is your... those are some of the requirements potentially in your campaign. A campaign where you're told to go to Lustria is a misery of a campaign in itself. Just the climate, the terrain situation of Lustria, or just the jungle situation. I mean, I could put Teclis at number 1 on this list just on the jungle warfare alone. But it's not just the jungle warfare alone. Teclis has always been a horrible legendary lord. He should have always been better. His campaign doesn't make a lick of sense. His starting position doesn't make sense. His campaign mechanics don't make sense, but it ends up being a very, very horrible campaign to play, and very difficult as well. Because there's factions that can hard counter what you have in terms of a unit roster. And finally, at number 1, it would be Cetra the Imperishable. Make no mistake about the other campaigns I've put on this list. They can have a difficult time in their campaigns, but at least they can deal with their problems. Cetra just may not have the tools. You can't recruit an additional army, and that alone is a major problem. Having to spend 14 turns to recruit another army, and even then being limited by the unit caps, is really an awful campaign start. You might get lucky and get the 5th book on Ash over there in Lamia, which, by the way, I'm very surprised it actually was there over here, because sometimes I have to start this campaign a dozen times over to get it over there, but that just gives you an idea. You can get it, but you're still going to spend turn after turn after turn just being able to recruit another army. You can get that army very quickly up to speed, but you're still going to have a lot of issues to deal with in this campaign. You do have a big-ass province that's very powerful, but you have a big-ass province with only one army for a decent chunk of the campaign when it actually matters. I've said it before and I'll say it again. The portion of the campaign that's most important in any campaign on any difficulty is the early game. Well, you got Skarbrand, you've got Malagor, you got Manfred, you have Volkmar, who doesn't particularly like you. You have Rapunzel, who doesn't like you. You have Arkhan, who certainly doesn't like you. I mean, one of these two is going to win the war over here in the west, and then they're going to come for you. You have Forik, you can kind of make it work, surprisingly. You can make it work with Forik Ironbrow in a campaign, but still, you have issue after issue after issue in this campaign, and it just never freaking ends, ever, in this campaign. Oh, and the best part about this campaign is, imagine you actually succeed in the early game. Imagine you deal with all the problems that you do have in this early game campaign. Do you know who you're going to have to deal with after all that? Warzag. And then Kairos. I swear, there's a reason why 3 of the campaigns on this list have to deal with both Warzag and Kairos. It's just that deadly combination, combined with the terrain design, combined with the jungle design, combined with their aggressiveness against you, that puts these campaigns like Teclis, Tic Tac Toe, and Cetra on this freaking list. Now, to be fair, Cetra can become unstoppable later on in his campaign, but getting to that point, you're looking at 30 turns. The campaign is over anyway at that stage. Or is it? And even then, once you start having unlimited power, it's not necessarily going to be the easiest walk in the park either for Cetra. Tomb Kings desperately need an update. to work well within the meta. Like, seriously, I understand the original design, but this research should take 4 turns at most, or something along those lines. Maybe. Cosine here, signing out. Stay tuned for more. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and enable notifications.